what we are trying to do in this course again, guys, we already covered in so many occasions how we can protect our networks. Okay, so we talked about risk. We talked about protection techniques. We talked about also we talked a whole course about detection techniques and what is the threat intelligence and all this other stuff, guys. So this is all we have already covered in too many occasions. Okay, and again, we are in basically in a cyber war. And a cyber war, you don't have only to protect yourself. Okay, you don't have only to detect anomalies, but you need to also to understand what the attacker will do. Okay, and how the attacker will penetrate your system. Why? Because we're trying to give you the whole holistic idea behind cybersecurity. So we give you the defensive side, and we give you the offensive sides. And you should be able to understand both of them, because in order to win a cyber war, you need to understand your opponent, adversary. You need to understand their techniques, their technologies, their procedures to penetration systems. Because once you understand all this, you will be able to really protect your system in a much better way. So we give you the whole, I would say, the both sides of the cybersecurity. Okay, so if you can see here, guys, in really to adapt the mentality of cybersecurity or a hacker. Okay, in order to really protect yourself from this, you need really to see what is the hacker methodology is, how the hacker penetrates systems. And again, the hacker methodology is just a systematic steps to really gain a privilege over a system, or to really attack a system. Okay, so they follow certain steps or methodology. Okay, and these steps we mentioned it before: reconnaissance, and under each one of these, by the way, steps, guys, there is subcategories. We have in scanning, we have multiple stages of scanning. Okay, even gaining access, guys, it divided to many also sub stages. We have tried to explain these sub stages. Okay, and it's good that you know this sub stages, because it could be beneficial in an interview. So this is not a page. Okay, it could be beneficial if you really wanted to go for certification like CEH. Okay, like certified ethical hacking. They will definitely ask you about these stages and the sub stages as well. Okay, and it's also good for sometimes if you have these skills to start to really do scanning in your network and try to find vulnerabilities and find issues before the bad guys find it. So this kind of mentality will help you even at workspace, because you can say, you know what, I know how to do scanning. I have tried this before. I have made some, scanning before. I really need to get this permission and start to really scan and see what kind of, results I will get. So what we're trying to teach you here, I'm not asking you to exploit the system. I'm asking you to have the knowledge base about the system, how you collect information about the system, especially if you're insider, if you work in an inside organization as a penetration testers, or someone who's been taught as a penetration testers. It will be easy for you guys to do the scanning and read the reports and try to understand, oh, I got this vulnerability. This vulnerability has CVSS 7.5. Oh, what that mean? Okay, so these all kind of information will be useful later on when you start your career. Why? Because now you understand why I'm doing this, okay, in this course at least, okay, and we give you a bit of experience about how to do this. And yesterday and the day before, we were talking about gaining access, how to gain access. And we mentioned that there is also, after scanning, we still are very keen to gather more information about, especially internal network, especially if someone is internally are doing this, or maybe someone exploited the system and he wanted to really explore the network. So we mentioned that we have something called enumeration. And enumeration, basically, we're trying to enumerate certain protocol that exist in our network and operate in our network, and try to clean more information about our systems and our computers as much as we can. So we try to get more users, more shared files, more printers, more data about the management, and how for example, the network has been managed, how the DNS been managed. Can we transfer the DNS records to our systems? This is all, guys, part of enumeration. we have covered the enumeration, and I think enumeration is just another active scanning to gather more information about the internal network. And both someone internally who is attacking the network or someone have just exploited the network will be very interested to do enumeration. So this is what enumeration. How about we yesterday we also covered something right after enumeration, which is password attacks, and we mentioned that password attacks, is it comes in the board order in so many subcategories. Some of these categories are non-technical. This is like the social engineering one, the one we talked about yesterday, like dumpster diving, shoulder surfing, all these other phishing emails. This is all social non-technical way. And I would say there is also a part of its technical way, and even the technical way is divided to subcategories, and these categories are considered offline and online. So if the system is online, we can do all different type of attacks like dictionary attacks, brute force attacks, especially if we don't have a very good security policy to protect our password. And that's how we link that what we learn in protective techniques, that we need to implement the password policy, okay, and whether in your computer or within even the cloud or within Active Directory. Inshallah, if we set up Active Directory, we show you guys how to really secure this password. Why? Because the attacker is after this password, and they have so many techniques, okay, they can use until they break into password. Once he has the username from the enumeration and the password here, is game over. He gained access to the system already. Okay, and we also mentioned the bus the hash attacks, how to bus hashing to attacks, and we explain what is hashing, what is salting. We explain at least NTLM authentication, how it's been done in Windows. We explain also as well how Kibros as an authentication are used. And we didn't really explore attacks in this because we really limited on time a little bit. But again, we can really later on assign a whole class about how to pass the hash to a computer and how to be gaining access just by the hashing system. Okay. We also mentioned the offline part, and the offline part basically, if you manage to exploit a system and have all hashes that exist in the SAM database or maybe exist in the ATC shadow file in your Linux system, how to really try to, I would say, crack these hashes and get to the original password. We talked about pre-computed hashes file, which is rainbow tables. And also you can play with rainbow tables. You can download rainbow tables in your computer and can use it. And I think also Asad yesterday covered with you a little bit about, Burp Suite and how Burp Suite can be used to really exploit web application. Okay, so this is what we have covered so far. In gaining access, also, guys, we can use a very well-known, I would say, a very well-known vulnerability that exists in our web application. Why this is specifically topic are coming today? Okay, this will take me a little bit all the way to maybe 2000. Okay, maybe if we go back with a time machine to 2000, the web when it started, guys, really back in these days was only way communication. What we mean by only way communication, it was you, okay, serving the web, okay, and serving the web means whatever the web developer put in this website, okay, what happened is you will be able to see it, okay, you will be able to read it. So maybe you have all this, nice old days of Maktub, CNN, Yahoo.com, where you go and look at news and surf the internet and see what is this internet is all about. But this way, at that time there was no much attacks at that time, guys. Really, it was like really limited attacks in 2000. Maybe a password attack would be the maximum, because user at that time was started to create mailboxes, okay, and they created username and password to access the mailboxes. And at that time, guys, most of the attack that happened here is if someone really managed to get into your mailbox and read your emails. So this is the maximum that can happen. And there's so many, it was techniques. Brute force was one of them for sure. And trying different password, combination of password, dictionary attacks was one of them. So was early days of web, okay? But then the web really what's happening is it has been developed a lot. So we are, I would say, we are living right now in the third use browser plugin as a hack tool, like one in the Firefox back in 2000. Yes, this is, I think, mashallah, Naif is, I would say, is one of the early guys here who used the internet, because he remembered these days. Okay, so, and then the web, it changed it to, I would say, web 2. And web 2, guys, was really, this is, I would say, web 1 was more static and very less dynamic. So you cannot really change a lot on the page. You cannot customize the page that you want to as much as you want. But then the web 2, okay, what we are using right now is more dynamic. Okay, it's very interactive. Okay, you can customize the search result as much as you want. Okay, there is even a website that will allow you, it's basically an application running. Okay, and this application, according to your input, okay, it will be changing the application behavior. So this is web 2. And this is when web 2 started, guys, it's really allowed a lot of attacks. Okay, especially I'm expecting some input from you, okay, to really look into this application. And that's what was started, the XSS, SQL injection, cross-site script 4G, injections in general, okay, command line injection. There's so many injections that you will see with Abir later on, or maybe tomorrow when we do this damn vulnerable application vulnerability website. So there's so many attacks being opened when we have a dynamic web pages, because we are accepting data and we are retrieving data from the users. Okay, and even the web that we know at that time, guys, is changing right now. So if you started to do a penetration testing, this is something I will explain today. Okay, we don't have the three-tier architect anymore that we used to have back in the days. We don't have a front-end application side database. Right now we are using containers, we're using microservices, we're using certain different databases at the same time for the same application, for the same website. And a lot of websites like Facebook, like Netflix, all these big names are moving from web 2, which was three-tier architect when it comes to how to build your application, to a more complicated, complex, I would say very complex right now, services. And the whole idea here is to run containers, to run microservice, to run certain stuff. I'll explain what is microservice in one in a bit. But again, what makes this very interesting for the IT guys, because web presence is where he can find you. Okay, this is the link between, this is the arena. Okay, let's say this is a war arena. Okay, and this is the attacker. Okay, how the attacker will get to any company, guys? They will try to look for something that can represent them online. Okay, and something that a lot of companies, guys, they are using. Exactly, no, it's an entry door. I would say it's not a back door, it's an entry door. Entry door means like a place where he can find you. Let's say that's maybe this guy's James are very, or Bob, because I know you guys like Bob now. You are really into Bob. Okay, so let's say that Bob is wanted really to attack a company. Okay, if he open Maltigo or if he open any Google search, the first thing that pop up from this company specifically is the website. Okay, so the website represent how the company reach to the public. Okay, and it also represent how the attackers will reach you, because how we hosted our website is very interesting. We hosted our website back also to what we have learned before in DMZ. In DMZ is an area that will allow someone from an external network to access your website and see what is the content. The problem is a lot of website guys are somehow okay connected to our internal network. So what the attacker will try to do is made, this is the normal attack vector here. Okay, is he will try to compromise this website. Once he compromises the site, this website, he knows this website somehow are connected to your internal network somehow. Okay, and if you don't really segregate and segmented your network in a very good way, the second step, he will do an enumeration again. okay, or who do post-exploitation reconnaissance. Sometimes they call it post-exploitation reconnaissance. Why? Because he wanted to do the something we studied before called island hopping. So he will be trying to hopping to another machine that does have some more information about you, or maybe he will jump to a financial, application that's inside your organization and start, or maybe he will compromise the users who is logged to your website, maybe by run this website as a water hole. So there is so many things that the attacker can do once he already, figure out how to attack this website and take over. And that's why I would highly recommend you guys, if you work in a place, the website is really, really important area to look at. Usually before, again, we are looking at back in the 2000 and 2005 days, when we have a website, the maximum that can attacker can do is basically to deface the website and take a control of website. But at that time, the website was not really connected to anything else. It was there to show a presence. But right now, most of the website, especially for, I'm coming from financial background. So this website, okay, for let's say XYZ Bank, will be connected to the online banking for this website. So that means that he will, if he managed to compromise the website, he will try to compromise the online banking website, and the online banking website is connected to the database. Okay, so this is how it is. Okay, and that's why web attacks is always in the top, and that's why we have OWASP 10. We have something called CWE 25 top vulnerabilities. Why? Because the attackers are day and night working on web servers, trying to find vulnerability and trying to exploit this vulnerability. So you will not go in any penetration testing course or any penetration testing, I would say, academy without teaching you about web application. And again, the attacker really doesn't really need to compromise a username and password here, because if he found a valid vulnerability, he can take over the entire website. And once he is in taking over the entire website, guys, he can start to do all this other bad stuff to your internal network. So this is important. And what I was trying to say before also, when you are an administrator in an organization and you have a website, try to make sure that your website is secure, and also try to make sure that you are segmented the area between your website and the internal network in a really in a really proper way. So you implement VLANs, you implement firewalls, you implement maybe IDS or IBS, intrusion detection system, intrusion prevention systems, and this is will be at least enough to protect your internal network even if your website is compromised. Okay, guys, so this is what I wanted really to explain in this gaining access. And again, the whole idea about behind penetration testing and why we're teaching penetration testing is to really evaluate your security. Okay, in general, you try to identify vulnerabilities within your networks before the bad guys can really do this. Okay, and try to also to find remedies and find rectifications or countermeasure or controls to really secure your network before the bad guys will really penetrate you. And again, the way you do this in a big organization, they have you can see this technology started to emerge, especially for companies who works in as an online. They have a lot of online presence. So we have different teams. We have the blue teams. This is similar to the security engineer who is really defending the systems. Okay, so this is guys in the defensive and detection part of the realm. We have someone who is mimicking the attackers and try to be very aggressive like an attacker and attack the systems. You will find them, they call them red team. And red team is basically the offensive side of security. This is the penetration side. This is what we teach you in the course. And we have sometimes also this has been emerged recently as something purple teams, and the purple teams, it's exactly the purple team is like DevSecOps, like Naif is saying. Basically, we have now the developers, the operation team, the security are sitting together trying to make things are secure. And by the way, this question Yanaif, specifically for you, I have already had it in one interview. They said, can you tell us what is purple team is all about here? Okay, and the first thing that came to my mind at that interview is to say the purple team is basically the DevSecOps. And he said, like, you know what? It's true. This is how it really works here. You have security team working with operation teams to make development and operation, like operating the network and the infrastructure, is secure. So this is different security teams. And by the way, guys, you find these teams a lot in big companies right now. So you will not. I'm telling you, you will find sometimes in LinkedIn some jobs saying that we're looking for a red team player or a blue team player, and they will explain what kind of capabilities and what kind of experience they want in these guys. But again, I just find it interesting. If we are talking about penetration testing, is basically to talk about security different teams. Okay, and by the end, guys, or by the end of the day, what you are really required to do after you do the penetration testing, or after you run all that we have taught you guys, from reconnaissance to scanning to gaining access, is to come up with a nice report highlighting what is the vulnerability, giving a recommendation how to secure the network. And to be honest, this is really more effective, I would say, okay, for risk management. Okay, because if you only looking at vulnerabilities and you do only vulnerability scanning, that's what we explained before. What is the difference between vulnerability scanning and penetration testing? Vulnerability scanning can show you a lot of results, but some of these results are false positive. Okay, when I will be sure this is a real vulnerability and this is what need to be remediated immediately. Okay, if we have someone can validate this vulnerability and prove it's a real vulnerability and it has very high score, now your risk score is going to shoot up, and now you need to really recommend a solution to really rectify or to reduce or to mitigate the risk. So this is basically something you really need to know. Is by the end of this course, maybe me or Asads or someone, okay, or maybe Abir will give you an idea how to write the penetration testing report, okay? And the penetration testing report is gonna be a report. Is gonna be divided to many sections, and these sections, some of them are executive summaries, some of them is gonna give you a brief for what you have done, what kind of scanning, what system, what is the scope of this penetration testing, and finally it will give highlight which vulnerability was really the most high severity vulnerabilities, and also will give a recommendation from you according to what you have learned from the prevention techniques, detection techniques, how to stop these vulnerabilities. So this is actually the end result of this course. Okay, and here is in the first early beginning of this lecture, we talk about the evolution of web application and evolution of web application. This is how the web has developed over the year. Okay, Ustaz Abtisam, uh, can SIM generate this report? No, SIM will not generate this report. A penetration testers who is responsible for doing this. If you guys allow me, uh, if you go here and you can say SANS. SANS is a big institution. Penetration, pen test, okay, pen test report samples. Okay, if you hit here, you will get a lot of um, samples that shows you how to do penetration testing and what difference area in the penetration testings. So sometimes the penetration testing report is very big according to, again, to the scope. Okay, let me see if it's really giving me a report. Report planning. Oh, this is actually not a report. This is basically, yeah, this one. Okay, so basically this is gonna be telling you what was the scope. Okay, so the scope can be really big. We scan a lot of stuff. You try to penetration a lot of stuff. See here the document summary. Okay, you will find executive summary. You will find an area for test scope summary. You have phases summary, action taking, and you have external phases, and you have conclusion. So this is really interesting. Okay, it depends again. I agree with UM. It depends about your scope. Okay, if your scope is to scan mobile application and maybe cloud application and also internal application. So this is the scope is huge, and then you will have to do a lot of things. But again, see, he's including a snapshot of his scanning, or maybe this is an exploitation. I think, yeah, this is an exploitation. So he shows that we found the vulnerability and we managed to exploit it, and he will, he will declare how he exploited, and what kind of files he managed to get after exploitation, and maybe here is trying to do some enumeration to all the network users, okay, or add a new user here by this command. He's adding a new user with this password. Anyway, so this is all penetration testing. And then you will find also like a recommendation recommendation part. So this is really why they hire you to prove there's a vulnerability, and also to give them remediation at the end. So this is exactly how it works. Okay, guys. So this is what I wanted to show you in the penetration testing report. But this is the penetration testing report, guys, is not going to be part of your SIM. It's going to be part of the red team or offensive team, or even if you don't have a team internally, okay, who can do this or capable to do this, you can hire third party or external organization to do this in your behalf. And again, one more thing that I wanted to really tell you, some certain industry, okay, or some certain service will require you to do penetration testing in every 2 months or every 3 months. So if you are in financial industry, because this is where the money is and a lot of attackers, there are eyes there, you are required in each quarter to run a penetration testing by a third party, not by only your team. And you only need to really rectify all 90% out of all the findings they do. So this is even a regulator, or I would say, regulation you need to comply with. So sometimes it's not your even choice to do penetration testing, and that's why I think penetration testing is interesting. Okay, here is also the evolution of web application. We mentioned that the evolution is we are living in the two-way information, and we can see that I have explained this before. We are doing a lot of stuff right now online. Look at what you can do now online. You can pay for your, for example, license. You can renew your license. You can pay for fines. You can do all most of your transactions online on a bank. Okay, you can do most of your government, documents online. So we really rely on a web application a lot. Okay? So this is another thing. And the way that I like to break this to anyone who is still new in web application, I know some of you guys, mashallah, they are having a great experience in web application. They spend most of their studies maybe doing, web application development, and they understand Ajax, they understand, how HTTP react, what kind of HTTP headers, how can manipulating the HTTP headers, and all this stuff. And some of you, this is for them a new topic. So the way that we like to explain this is to like to explain the how HTTP as a protocol is used, is it exactly working, how it works. Okay, we talked about something called same origin policy, because of the same origin policy, if we don't really apply the same origin policy, we can end up with a lot of attacks to our website. So how same origin policy will work. We'll talk about cookies and session. Maybe I have mentioned this before in a really quick ways. We will talk about encoding, proxy servers, and we'll talk about again OWASP, because again, the course is all about penetration testing, and OWASP is all about highlighting to everyone what is the top 10 vulnerabilities. And again, the top 10 vulnerabilities, how they collected according to a feedback they collected from the community, because OWASP is open project. So we have so many people, whether are they penetration testers or whether they are web developers, they contribute to this project. So you say, okay, we notice that recently there is so many vulnerability that exists that allow someone to inject a script. Okay, so how many, and then according to the feedback and according to what kind of the impact we will have if this vulnerability materialized or someone exploit this vulnerability, and what kind of damage we will have from confidentiality point of view and integrity point of view and availability point of view. They will highlight the top 10 vulnerability according to what is the feedback they are getting. And for sure, guys, the more vulnerability you find, and the impact that can cause by this vulnerability, the highest in the list be. And that's why every 3 years you find different type of vulnerability. Some of the vulnerability used to be like number one, it be number three or four, and some of them will be it used to be like number five, it will be number two, because according to the feedback and also the damage and the likelihood of someone can really exploit this vulnerability. So this is all things that you keep in mind when you look at the OWASP 10. You need really to focus on the first six or seven, because this is really what is really widespread right now. Again, you will not be able to defend this vulnerability alone. You need also to get some recommendations. So always have a section that will allow you to read this recommendation. And if you are a developer, you can implement this solution right away into your code. Okay, if you are a security engineer who doesn't know how to really relay on the code, then you can really relay on basically on using tools like static tools and dynamic tools. We have explained this maybe in a lecture. I don't know if you guys remember, but again, what this static tools and dynamic tools will allow you is going to allow you to review the code, okay, that someone written. And if he doesn't really know how to write it in a secure way, the static tools, according to the scan, that it will scan your code and then highlight all the issues in this code from quality perspective and from also security perspective. And some of these tools are really advanced, like the one from Micro Focus, they have Fortify. There's another one from a company in UK, it's called the Sneak. It used to also to do this scanning. There's also a company called Sys, I think, SysOb Sin. This is also a very well-known company in the US. Okay, this is also will do you to do the static scanning and then highlight this area, and it will give you recommendation how to fix it. So you don't have maybe a developer who is well educated in security, but you will have these tools to help you to look at the source code and find this vulnerability and try to find remedies for these vulnerabilities. Again, this can be done on the static means when the code written in the web application in the first place or in a mobile application in the first place. But then we have some vulnerability that will not shows until we have our code is up and running and act as a web server. So we do another vulnerability scanning. We do NESs, vulnerability scanning. There's so many of them, by the way. There is also Micro Focus. Also, they have it is up and running, and now we will use fuzzing application to fuzz every single each point here or entry point, and it will allow you to find out if this entry point is susceptible for SQL injection or cross-site scripting or whatever. Okay, and then you will get another results of your this vulnerability. We have this vulnerability. We have this vulnerability. This is the recommendation to do this. So you can always go back to the developer and ask them to do this vulnerability. So either you have someone on place who understand how to write secure code, and that's why it's important to write secure code, or you will use these tools and integrated it in the development life cycle. And then we have some vulnerabilities Well, I remember now when we talked about this, when we talked about SDLC and secure development life cycle, and you integrate this in the life cycle and try to find how to fix it. Okay, like the application iframe, sometimes clickjacking happens here. So there is so many attacks. And Naif is mentioning one of these attacks called clickjacking. So yes, but there is so many even more dangerous attacks that can happen. Okay, imagine if you are developing a web application for a bank site and it is vulnerable for injection. Okay, guys. Again, what I wanted also to highlight here is this is how our web application used to look like back in the days. I would say this is in 2005 all the way to 2016, 2017. Okay, this is how our server used to be. And again, what we call this is going to be architect. Architect means what? Architect means what is the main components that our websites are using to communicate. So they call this sometimes monolithic HTML, the JavaScript, and the CSS cascading style sheet exist. And we have the web server. This is where is the logic is. The logic means this is where you interact with your data. Okay, so maybe if you have a web application and you requested this web application to really to transfer money, so it will take the user input, it will take the amount, it takes your password, and then it will go in the database and transfer this amount from your account to another account or to do the bank transfer. So this is the logic. This is where you write your code. This is where, for example, you use something like Java or PHP or C Sharp or ASP.NET or JavaScript. Even JavaScript can be used in the web server side as well. Okay, and this is where the logic happen. And this is where I think most of you guys, if you coming from a web application background, you have already developed a lot of applications be saved, or where is this going to be retrieved for the user end users. Okay, especially if you work in an e-commerce website or something that we really rely on it to sell and buy stuff online. Very important, because this is where the customer data is, where their financial data is, where the government data is, and even sometimes where very, I would say, critical information about a certain organization is. So if someone managed to really get to the database and steal the customer information, you can be exactly. This is like a sequence diagram. And sometimes you see there is a data flow also is going this way or coming this way according to the request and reply. And sometimes you use technology like Ajax here and all other this stuff that can be used to also retrieve the data from the database in a much the normal web application. And I think this is what used to have one certain application that everyone contribute to come this application up and running. But what happened recently, guys, there is a new trend right now in the market. Maybe Faisal know about it and Naif knows about it. It's called microservice architect. And the microservice architect basically are using new technology, and its new technology allow us to divide this monolithic one server here that it used to be one server to multiple server or to multiple containers, okay, or to multiple virtual machines. Okay, and each one of these application are doing a specific task. So if you allow me just to give you, and this is, Microsoft Architect. But let's say that's my application, guys, used to be doing multiple things. Like, for example, it used to do, check out. It used to calculate your shopping cart. It used to give you the sign in and sign out for this website. It used to allow you to search a certain database for products. Okay, so we have one application Okay, what we used to develop as a monolith, decided to make it microservice. What microservice is? This is all four service: 1, 2, 3, 4. So one for checkout. So I will take this one checkout and I will develop the application for the checkout. Okay, and then I will develop another application app two for shopping cart. Okay, so this is application number two. And another application will be responsible for the sign in and the sign out. Okay, and another application here will be responsible for the database of products and customers. Okay, so we have divided our website to basically four different microservices. And each one of these microservices, maybe it has her own database. Okay, some of them are hosted in your own organization bتاعتك, and some of these applications are hosted on the cloud. So that's why I'm saying that web application right now are seeing a lot of changes. So why I'm telling you guys this, because you can be in an interview, and if you told them about the monolithic view only, okay, they will know that you are not really updated about what's happening in the market. Okay, and the reasons why, again, what is the motive behind this, guys? Why we used to have one application updates? Really need to have a lot of people are working together to just push one updates, and it will take time because you'll be worried about what you worried, because if you write a part of the code here that impacted the whole entire website, the entire website will be down. Okay, especially if you wrote something wrong. But here you can have faster development, faster. This is agile, or this is what we call DevOps, faster development. So you have team that dedicated to really write and run something here, and you have a team that dedicated to run. And if this component is that have an issue, the other component are okay, and this still can work and function. Okay, in the website. So you have a part of the website is not working, but the rest is working. Okay, so this is the whole idea. So faster development, agile development. This is what the reason. Okay, the other reason, in my humble opinion, is if you have one issue, it will not take the entire application down. It will only have an issue with one of these containers or one of these virtual machines. Okay, so this is another also reason why this being adopted: faster development and less troubleshooting if we have an issue, because the issue will be only in one of these containers. So, and this has become the model right now, by the way, guys. So you will not find any new development is not happening in this. Again, how the micro service are running? They are running in basically hardware. So you can run this development, the microservice, on bare metal. So you have hardware and install the Microsoft microservice right after. You can use virtualized machines. Okay, so each one of these components will be running over a virtual machine. Okay, so you have 4 virtual machines, or you can run this over a containers. And the difference between running this over a virtual machine or a containers, guys, containers are easy for the developers. Why? Because I'm not really worried about dependency. So if I can develop this in the container, okay, and they develop it in a well managed way, I can give this container to anyone and he can run it. If he run it in the cloud, it will run. If he run it in a Windows environment, it will run. If he run it in a Linux environment, it will run. For the developer, it's easy to run in the container or in a virtual environment. So that's why we see a lot of potential right now application in this way, which is the microservice. How we deploy it in a virtual machine, we deploy it in the containers, or we deploy it right away in the cloud, because the cloud also allow you to develop something called infrastructure as a code. So you write code to build your instance and then deploy your code on top of this instance. So it doesn't matter. You write your code and then what is underlying technology, it doesn't matter here, whether a container, visualized machine. But again, why I think, guys, this has become like really complex, especially for us in security, because security, guys, it's used to be a straightforward in this model. Okay, you need to implement controls here. You need to implement, look at the code here. You need to implement a security in your. You need to look at the security for containers. Okay, so containers security is also like a virtual machine security. Okay, you need to make sure there is no container escape, as we talked about virtualization escape or virtual machine escape. We need to also make sure that no one in one container over the network will attack the other container. Like what we said, if we are sharing the hardware, we are worried that one VM will be able to attack another VM because we are in the same network also. So we wanted to make sure. So we have a lot of to take care of. Even OWASP, I think last year or maybe 2 years ago, they have top 10 containers security threats and vulnerabilities. So containers does have a lot of vulnerabilities as well. And some of these are vulnerability are because it's virtual machines basically. Okay, and some of these containers because it connect to the same hardware or connect to the same network basically. So this is all the threats on containers and vulnerability. So we really need to look at each one of these microservices and try to secure it, and to secure the containers, and to secure sometimes they deploy these containers on the public cloud. So you need also to secure your public cloud. So how many components now? It used to be one thing to really care about in you have the application, you implement a firewall here, or maybe you implement. So now, in order to secure a web application, you really need to look at the DevSecOps here, how to secure the application that's written by the developer. Okay, and then once you do this, you do the static analysis, the dynamic analysis. Okay, once you come here, you come to the container security. So you really need to implement container security to make sure that the image that you use is not corrupted, the image that you use is not malicious. And then also this container, where it's going to be deployed, it's going to be deployed in on-prem. So you need to secure your on-prem. If it's not, you need to secure the public cloud. So one application, guys, will consist so many microservices, and you have to secure all these microservices. Sometimes one application will have 10 containers. Okay, again, okay, if I have 10 containers, guys, it's not easy for the developer or the operation team to really manage these containers. So what we end up with something called orchestration. What is orchestration? It's basically a console that will allow you to develop this, to deploy these containers in a well-managed way. Okay, so we added to this even complex environment something called orchestration to deploy containers and to deploy load balancing. So containers as well. Orchestration basically like Kubernetes. I don't know if you heard about this specific software. Kubernetes, Docker, they have something called container orchestration, Swarm. So you really need also to look at the orchestration security, because orchestration security, if someone managed to get to the console of the orchestration, that means he managed to access all your containers. So you really need to also implement security here. So that's why I'm saying that's really what's happening right now in the market really require us to be really focused and also multi-faces. Yani you need to understand what is microservice. You need to understand what is containers, how containers work. You need to understand what is public cloud and how it works and how to secure public cloud instance here. That's why you find sometimes we talking about a lot of how to secure the cloud, even if we are not in this course really uh, try to cover cloud, but again, it's important. And also, if you want me, we can talk about containers and how to do even penetration testing for containers. Right now, there is a trend, okay? If you have a lot of containers within your organization, you go and hire someone to do penetration testing for containers. Why? Because you trust your static analysis, you trust your dynamic analysis, okay? But the static analysis and dynamic analysis will only highlight vulnerability, okay, in the code. But we have here the environment that code is running through. Imagine this is going to be the operating system that this code is going to run over it. So I really need to know if this operating system is secure or not. So I can do still penetration testing for this operating system and see if it's secure. And that's why one of the recommendation when you implement these containers, guys, is basically is to use an operating system with minimum attack surface. So you use something, for example, they have many Linux operating system, many Windows Server operating system. That means a server or Linux or Windows with a very minimal requirement to run and very small amount of ports that can really work in this. But again, you need to have someone who is penetrating testing your container and see penetrating testing as well the cloud to see if your cloud instance and containers are secure. So this is also a topic that we can talk about if we have time, inshallah. Exactly. And again, guys, this has become the new arena for the cybersecurity and the hackers to really battle over. Why? Because the environment right now, in my early days, as a someone who's working in engineer, was the main concern here: the virtualization and the hardware on-prem. Right now, if you work in a company, there is a 50-50% that you're going to be working with containers and public cloud, or you're going to be working with the oldest traditional. Some environment like the government, and I would say the hospitals and the banking, they still working on-prem, but some new e-commerce, a lot of e-commerce right now, they are moving here. So basically, you can end up in a company which is basically all things that we've been teaching you in the course will be a little bit different because you need to protect this area, okay? And that's why I have recommended you guys many times to really study DevSecOps. Okay, guys? Okay. So this is again, inshallah, if I have time, I will try to cover container security, inshallah, in one lecture and how to do penetration testing. And this is, guys, again, the diagram of the difference between the monolithic architect in websites. Again, this is important because we are talking about web application security and monolithic architect. And the monolithic architect is, as you can see, straightforward. But here you have a user interface, and each under one of these function under the user interface, you will find a microservice. And some of these microservices are really dealing with each other, and all of them are connected to a different database and database instances. Okay, so this is why I will say that the security of this is a bit complex. This is a diagram of how containers are working, okay, and and the threats for containers. So we have a container escape, we have secret exposure within the application that runs in the containers, okay, and we have the container network. So we have something called like insecure networking. So someone can connect your container right away from the internet. Okay, so this is an issue. Or someone can really use this container to attack another container within the same virtual machine or within the same virtual environment. So this is all, containers issues in the new web development. So you need to really look at this as well. This is for sure. Plus, that's your application. Okay, here you should be able to really do a static analysis and dynamic analysis for your code that you run in the container. So you have container security issues, and you have still the old vulnerable code that, especially if you're running web application, so you should be also worried about the top 10 OWASP or maybe CWE. Okay, guys. Web application security versus API security. Also, there is also a new trend in the market, how API works and how things are working now is a bit different than it used to be working before. And I will explain why we have this right now. In the early beginning, again, 10 years ago, the traditional websites, again, how it works, you send HTML get, and you will get a server over here that can get this information from database, and you will get the response or the reply here. And this is how HTML works, okay? But right now, we are using, as I mentioned, the microservices, the applications, okay? And we have so many different sources that consume our data, okay? What I mean by consuming our data, we have this is not a web application anymore. This can be a web application. Can be a mobile application. Can be IoT device that's getting you this data. Can be another website that's getting our data. So we started to move from the get and response HTML to something called APIs. And API is a programming interface to really get data from sources and then distribute it to the clients. Okay, but again, it's easier for the developer to go for API request and response and get raw data in response. Why? Because this API can be consumed by any source, by mobile application, by web application, by IoT device, by another web server. So the developer here doesn't really need to develop a certain mobile application, a certain web application, a certain IoT application for the end user or for the end device as well. So we started to rely more about API. That's why API becoming also a concern, and this is why will add another concern to us as a security, how to secure API, because API also someone can really fail to authenticate to API and then get the proper data. So this is also another issue with API. If you go and check OWASP web site, you will find top 10 vulnerability in APIs. I can give you some sources also to read about API security. So again, what I wanted to really to know, and don't be surprised and don't be scared, that we have containers security, we have microservice security when it comes to application itself and how being developed. We have also normal OWASP top 10 web application are there as in concern, and we have now APIs concern or APIs securities. So we have now. Okay, bless you, Najwa. Okay, so instead of just looking at the top 10 vulnerability in OWASP, now we are looking at three top 10s, okay, vulnerabilities. We're looking at vulnerability in containers. We look at vulnerability at, normal OWASP, which is web vulnerability. And we look at top 10 vulnerability in API and authentications. So instead of 10, it used to be 5 years ago. Now we are looking at 30 top vulnerability, and each one of them are in a completely different domain. That's why I'm highly encouraging you guys, if you have time, to invest time to read about, how containers works, how web vulnerability works, how API works, and the top vulnerability in APIs. So, but again, we cannot cover all this in this course because this is require again like maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks of different courses to cover this. Okay, guys. Again, so we go to be back to the traditional way of networks and web application. And again, I know some of you already covered this long time ago. Some of you does understand how HTTP works, okay, and some doesn't really. So I really, when I usually teach this course, I teach this course from the scratch. I assume that you don't really know anything about HTTP or maybe HTTPS, and then gradually we take it how to hack these things. Because again, if you order really to hack something, you really need to understand how it works. Okay, so the GET and POST request, there is so many headers in HTTP that we will talk about. But again, we cannot talk about everything here, but what I promise is I can share with you this document, guys. It's around, I would say 53. It starts with the basics, as I am explaining now, all the way that we get to more details about how really hacks happens and how it's really, compromising basically service in our environment. So again, it's usually it's good to understand all this terminology, because if you are in the interview, I can assure you he will ask you in the basics, and then once you answer the basic questions, he will take it a little bit level up to advanced level. So he wanted maybe understand how you understand HTTP, and then if you understand HTTPS, what is the certificates, what happened in some higher interview. For example, if you go for Amazon interview, they will ask you how HTTPS works. Okay, what kind of messages are exchanged between the server and the client in HTTPS? How they exchange encryption techniques. Okay, and all this, how they agree about these techniques. So this is all, I would say, advanced. Okay, so they start with the basics and they get to the advanced. So it's always good to understand the basics and then advance it as well. So this section is taking it gradually one by one. Okay, so HTTP